Hi, and thanks for watching H3 TV, where we bring hope, health, and happiness into your office, into your workplace, and into your homes. I meet you here every Wednesday with a different guest speaker to talk about how to stay hopeful, healthy, and happy when life or work or everything can feel a little overwhelming. I like to remind people there's always hope. We can take care of our health, and then we will ultimately find happiness, which leads to healing individually and in our organizations. So thanks for being with us this Wednesday. If you have any questions or comments throughout the show, please don't hesitate to write in the chat box and we will respond to as many as possible. Today, I have with me my friend and guest, Lynn. Please help me welcome Lynn to the stage. Hey, Lynn, thanks for being here.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I'm so excited to be here with you, Annie. I love what you do and this intentional message about spreading happiness and joy and thinking about hope and health. I have to admit, I'm super excited. I'm a longtime listener, first time caller. So thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for being here. So tell us, who are you, Lynn? What do you do? Where do you live? What's your work? What's your purpose?
Okay, thank you. Well, my name is Lynn Jensen Nelson. I am here in Prior Lake, Minnesota, which is just south of Minneapolis. And I'm the founder of a company called Conversionomics Speakers and Consultants, where we have a collection or a collaborative of industry experts across a number of topics, areas of specialty, and we provide coaches, consultants, and speakers to our clients across the country. So that's where over time, that's where my business and my career has morphed. And I'm super excited to be putting my energy and time and talent into that business, which we've been around for about 8 years. But really, when COVID hit, that was a big push to take the business to a bigger level. So that's what we've been doing lately.
Nice. I love that, Lynn. I always say to other speakers, when we recognize we're not in competition, we're in collaboration, and that
Yes.
together we always hope to make a positive impact in the world. So I love what you've created because you're really saying, how do I gather more speakers to
Yes.
all make a bigger and more positive impact? So that's great. So as we talk about hope, health, and happiness, I like to know, what are your tips? How do you start your day? What are your things you do to keep an H3 life, as I call it?
Well, I love this, Annie, and I love the H3 life, but for me, it's probably an H4 life.
All
So
right.
I think about hope, health, happiness, and horses.
Love it.
So I will tell you, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it professionally, career-wise. I love what I do. I love being a part of this industry. I love meeting the needs of our clients. I get to work with amazing speakers like you and so many others that are, specialize in these awesome areas that as a former speaker, I couldn't even dream about being able to meet those needs of our clients. So that is a big part. I mean, being hopeful for the future, obviously that's a huge part of who I am. My career and my team and my clients are so important. But for me, a big part of hope, health, and happiness are the horses in my life. So I was really lucky. I was almost born on horseback. So my parents literally met on horseback. And as a former English teacher, I always make sure we use the term literally correctly. But they met on horseback, and my family has been actively involved in horses our whole lives. So I started riding almost before I could walk, and still now, a woman of a certain age, I'm still proud to be out there. And not only do I have horses, but I am competitive. So I compete every single weekend at different sized events throughout the country. And that part of my life really lends so much to that hope, health, and happiness. Because, again, part of this business, as you well know, this is the best job ever. Like, I feel like my whole life, every job I felt at the time was the best job ever. I was a high school English teacher, best job ever. Then I was a college professor, best job ever. Then I got into corporate America, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fantastic. And then I moved into owning my own business, and that was wonderful. And the understanding and really appreciating what you do is important. But boy, the speaking world can be really lonely. And I think until you're a speaker and until you're a speaker, and my friends are like, oh, what do you mean? You're in front of crowds and you're surrounded, but it's different. And so even though I love it, I find that really being intentional about making connections is important. And so my horses support all of that. So, because I'm competitive, I'm always trying to be hopeful. How do I always say I'm not the most skilled rider, but man, I work harder than anybody.
Yeah.
I'm competing with people who are half my age and sometimes less than half. And so, you have to have hope. Every time I approach the arena, or, I have a new equine partner, I have to be hopeful. And I also find that health wise, for me, because I love what I do, and if I'm not on stage or if I'm traveling, again, Annie, you know this too, it's hard to think about being healthy when you're on the road. Like
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, I'm on the road to have a martini at the restaurant, or oh, Snickers and Diet Pepsi for breakfast. That's perfectly appropriate when you're in a hotel, right? Like it's like the normal rules don't apply to life.
Because there's
And
no routine, right? Like we're out of our rhythm
exactly.
every
Yes,
time it's
Annie.
different.
There's no routine. And even when I'm working in my home office, I get so absorbed in I've got to reach out to 5 more people, or I need to do this proposal, that I would probably sit at my computer in my pajamas from morning until night if I didn't have to, go out and care for my animals. And,
Mhm.
I've got retired horses, I've got a pony, I've got my competitive horses now, and that it helps to have that routine. Like most people are like, just get a dog, right? Like it's a little bit easier because you go for a walk, but horses, it's the same way. And I also find that, so I come from a family of horse riders. So my mother competed well into her 70s.
Wow.
So that's a big thing. And I have to think about, like, how do I stay competitive? How do I take care of my health? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I preparing us both to be active and in shape as much as I possibly can? So that's a huge part of it. And frankly, they just bring me so much joy that, every horse, like every dog, like every person has a different personality, and you learn to adapt to that. And I spend a lot of time thinking, how do I keep them happy and healthy? And are they out enough? Do they have the right feed? Do they have the right, my horse has a chiropractor, nutritionist, massage therapist. She gets pedicures all the time. Me, I'm just kind of let things go through the summer. So it's really a big part of it. And now, so my mother competed well into her 70s. My sisters we could ride together, we compete together. And my nieces, who are the
Mm.
cutest on their little tiny, well, one of them, one's pretty big now, but one's still riding, a 38-inch pony. So just watching them and being a part of it just brings so much happiness and joy. So that's a
So
big part of it.
I love that. It sounds like a big purpose in your life is your horses, right? Like you have something, and I always say Peanut's my CEO and Leo's my CFO. And I mean, they boss me around, and Leo will like, get up. We're going for a walk, 5
Yes.
a.m. All right, we're going. They keep me in line with my movement. But how many horses do you have? And do you have a morning routine, either by choice or by need, for these beautiful animals that you love?
Yeah. So right now, actually, a friend of mine has some horses here right now with us. So right now we have 5 horses. Well, I always say 4.5 because one's a little pony.
Okay.
So we have 5 horses here right now. And yeah, you have to have a specific routine. A good friend of mine is a vet who specializes in horses. And he always says horses are so poorly built. Like they're really, really poorly built. They have big bodies and little feet, and their stomachs are really sensitive. And, like they can't, if a horse has a sick stomach, like they can't get rid of it like other animals. Instead, they just lay down and die, frankly. Like they're so poorly built. He said if humans hadn't really liked them from the beginning, we probably wouldn't even have them anymore. So you have to have a really strict routine. And part of being in training is that same thing. I have to think about, if I have a competition on Saturday, there's certain vitamins, there's certain grains, certain kind of hay. My pony, bless her heart, has some health issues. And so
Mm,
she has to be on medication and, a lot of routine. So that routine is really important. And frankly, like a lot of people, I do better when I have that routine.
yeah.
That structure is important. And again, I'm sure you've been in that boat too. Like when you're busy, it's when you're not busy is when things kind of get off kilter. And
Yeah.
so having
It's
that,
true.
knowing, yeah, I have to get out of bed at this time and I have to check water tanks and all of that. But it also, there are times you're like, oh, I have to go out. It's too cold or it's too hot. But then you get outside, it forces you to get outside in nature, and you feel the fresh air and you see the grass growing. And honestly, my favorite part of the day is in the morning when I've cared for all of our animals. So our cats and dogs and horses, and they've all been fed. I know they're all healthy, they're all safe. And I see them like trotting out to the pasture, and I think, yep, everybody is taken care of. Everybody is where they're in their happy place. And so that's kind of a highlight. That's the part of the day that I look forward to probably the most.
Well, and like you kind of combine everything into that is like you have that routine. For me, I always call it the framework. Like I don't want
Yes.
to know exactly what I have to do, but if I don't have some framework, I will be at my desk till 10 at night from 5 in the morning and Greg will go, hello, hello. And I'm like, oh yeah, I just wanted to do one more thing. Nope, you're good. One more thing can wait till tomorrow. Right. So that, and then the self-care. But I think there's something magical to me, at least about mornings. Like I think not everybody's up. Not everybody's busy. So I can just envision you having that moment with your animals, like all is well. All
Yes.
is well. Everybody's been cared for. And whether I'm cold or hot or whatever I am, it's all going to be okay. In this moment, no matter what's going on outside of your land that they are wandering on, that
Mhm.
everything's going to be okay. So I love that. And you also said something that I think is so important. And I just got to repeat what Lynn said earlier. And I think it's such a mindset thing, right? Like whatever our job is. Well, I've had some really challenging jobs, some not such beautiful jobs, from cleaning, from waitressing till 2 in the morning, whatever it is. But I have loved every job. And I think it's such a mindset. And I think it's deciding in this moment what is amazing about this season in my life, working for someone else, working for myself, cleaning up after a horse, whatever it is, I'm going to find joy in the messy and the beautiful moments. And I tease my husband that I want to be a waitress again. He's like, you are done. And I'm like, I love it. Like, I'm like meeting people and people are paying me money to be nice. And I just want to be nice for free. And he's like, oh my God. So anyway, I love that you said every job, whether it was an English teacher, there's always things that we can complain about in our life. But if we choose to, I love this. This season is awesome. In the midst of the challenge of it or the struggle, looking for the beauty, I just love that. And so my next question kind of is related to that. And I just think you do it so well. But I always think about the H3 hope, health, and happiness. Is that a choice? Does it happen by chance, Lynn? To our listeners that are out there feeling stuck, feeling like, man, I'm not happy or hopeful. And how the heck can Lynn be happy if she's cleaning up poop like that for a horse? I got Shih Tzu, but does it happen by chance, by choice, or by circumstance? And how do you just stay there? How do you get there and stay there? And I know we have some listeners. So just a reminder, if you have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat box and we will get to you. Go ahead, Lynn.
Great. Boy, it is a choice. And it's something that I love that you talk about cleaning up after the horses. Anybody will tell you that barn is my happy place. So but I think too, because in my career, there's so much problem solving and so many moving parts and pieces. There is something for me that I really enjoy about just something that's very clear and systematic. This needs to be done. This needs to be cleaned. This needs to be filled. And so I think it is a choice. And if you look at people who are really happy, I know you like to, I binged watch like every episode of this show in the last 3 days. And I love that sometimes you ask about joy and happiness. And to me, the concept is like joy is like to me, joy is a natural instinct. There's just something that just sparks joy, and all of this, it's something different. I love it. Like if you ask me what was the last time you felt joyful, this weekend again at a horse show, my niece, who is the funniest, cutest bundle of energy, and she made a joke, and I love when people make me laugh. I try to make people laugh, and I don't she made a joke about me, and it was super funny, and I laughed so hard. And then she's like, that's how you burn your auntie. And she's just like, it was so, I couldn't stop laughing. And to me, that's joy. Like joy is a natural instinct. There are just certain things, certain colors, certain people. I love that feeling when I look out my office window and see my husband come home for the day, and I know we're going to make dinner. Well, he does all the cooking. I drink the wine and say what a great job he does. But that sparks joy. Seeing my favorite girlfriends and that big, like that sparks joy. But man, happiness, I feel like happiness has to be so intentional. It is more about thinking, looking for the good in the challenge. And I know, Annie, your other guests, they share quotations from Byron and Shakespeare and all these amazing, brilliant people. I actually take mine from Laura Ingalls Wilder in Little House on the Prairie. So I grew up in Minnesota. My hometown is mentioned 3 times in the Little House on the Prairie series. So I'm not trying to brag, Annie, 3 times in the Little House on the Prairie books, but they talk about this concept, and it was during one of the really hard times. And they said there's no great loss without some small gain. And I feel like that's choosing happiness. That's not getting bogged down. And just personally, again, like you, there's like this persona that we have on stage, and then there's like the real person. And when I'm leading a team or I try so hard, like no matter what crazy thing happens, mics don't work, you trip going on the stage, there's a heckler in the back, whatever, I try to make light of it and show that but boy, deep down at the end of the day, I have to work hard at it because I'm a perfectionist. I get really frustrated with myself quickly, and I'm not proud of that. It's just true. I'll look back on this and be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or oh, I shouldn't have jumped in or told that story. But I try really hard to bring that into my real life too. That choosing joy and choosing happiness, because probably some of the happiest people have dealt with some really crummy stuff,
That's
like
right.
really crummy stuff, and they're still happy and they choose that. So I try to work on that as much as I can, and look at those challenges, and always be thinking, okay, we had this big challenge, let's talk COVID for 2 seconds. In the industry, like my career was at the top the week before COVID hit, and I've shared this story with you, but I had 56 events cancel in 72 hours, and it was like whiplash, like a car accident. And that was also the time I learned I could have liquor and Dairy Queen delivered to my house. So, there was a balance of that day, but man, it also helped me build Conversionomics. If I
Yeah.
was on the road, I couldn't have built it. And so I try, but I have to be really intentional. I try to come across that way to most people, but I will say when I'm here in my office by myself, sometimes I have to be like, okay, what's the gain in this? How do I pick myself up and brush myself off and go out and, try to get that new business or recruit those new speakers. So
Yeah. You're bringing me back to a flashback of two flashbacks. One, I lost 110 engagements. And I have still not fully recovered, but I was on that. My husband was ready to retire. In fact, he had made a shift in his work because my calendar was so full and I knew I'd need some support at home. So,
sure.
yeah, I don't share that too much. But anyway, we're back. We're headed in the right direction. But you also make me laugh with your niece, because I was sitting around with a group of women once and they were talking about junior high and high school and like being teased and being bullied. And I was silent, which is rare anyway. And I was totally silent, just looking at all of them. And they're like, why aren't you saying anything? And I'm like, you know what? I have never been teased. I've never been bullied. And they all start laughing. And I was like, what's so funny? And they're like, we all harass you all the time and tease you. You're just oblivious. You're just like, so you like, okay. So I love that you laughed at your niece is like a burn. And I'm like, I think it's your perspective. I think it is your personality. And though you might be more perfectionistic than and it's probably why you like cleaning things and completing things. My husband's very much a perfectionist, and you like to see it accomplished. You like to see it finished. And like, I did that, done, check. And for me, I'm always like, show up a little messy and human, because then we're more relatable. Because sometimes when we have the power of the platform and the gift of the platform, people start to think we're perfect. And I always say to people, I am not perfect. I am messy. I'm a work in progress, but I'm passionate about helping people get started on their progress toward joy, toward happiness, toward hope, whatever the situation. So I love that you're authentically sharing, that's part of who you are and you're working on it. And we all have stuff we're working on, right? Like we're all a work in progress.
We're all a work in progress.
All a work in progress.
We say that in our house with my husband. That's our we say that all the time. Well, we're a work in progress. We've only been together, 27 years now. So we're still a work in progress.
I was going to say, when you've been with someone a long time, you learn, what about this? We've been together 30 years, just celebrating 25. And it's like, you're still learning about each other and you're learning, oh, that bugs me. Oh, why does that bug me? Who cares? Just let it go, move on. All right. So I want to know, what do you think the difference is between hopeful and optimistic? Is there a difference? What is it?
I love that question. So again, I kind of feel like to be hopeful is like a mindset, and like optimistic is more like who we are. Like I think there are people who just have that mental outlook that okay, and it's that balancing act that we talk about, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I think that's kind of my mentality about a lot of things, because I am an over preparer, as you and I have discussed. I just feel like if there's anybody they should see, like I literally have like notes. I created a spreadsheet. Like, yeah, that's just who I am. So I'm hoping it's going to go well. But I think that hopeful is like that more also event specific. I think people, I think about like, hey, I hope this I hope this goes well. I hope that our relationship continues to grow. I hope that my marriage continues to grow, even though things are a roller coaster all the time. I hope my friends and family are healthy. I feel like they're tied to something specific versus optimistic is an approach to life. And I was watching one of your previous videos and I loved you guys got into the conversation about, I think it was fun fillers.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't heard that. I use fun sucker. That's what term we use.
The FS and the FF, right?
I love that. Yeah. See, we only had fun haters and fun suckers. So I usually have to explain the difference. Some just don't like it. Some actually pull it out of the room. But I love that fun filler. And again, that's an approach. There are just people that come into a space and change the energy. Even before they do or say anything. And you're one of those people, Annie. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but whether it's like a huge ballroom or even just, a living room with 5 people, like you shift the energy and that optimism comes pouring out of you. But I also feel like it's intentional. I feel like you probably don't always feel like that. I don't know, but you probably don't always, but you're intentional about it. Like that's the energy I want to bring into the room. And I think that's optimism. Like that's the person who's like, I know how I approach this will make a difference. And that is so powerful. Yeah. I think too often people approach it differently. And they're like, well, there's nothing I could do or say. I work a lot in the sales and customer service arena, leadership arena. And people are like, well, customers are crazy. There's nothing I could do or say to make it better. And that just isn't true. No, there is always something we can do to improve the situation. And I feel like that's optimism. Like when you call up the card company, or like Delta, and you're like, we have a situation, and there's every once in a while you get that amazing person who's like, all right, well, tell me what's going on. Let's find a solution. And you're like, oh,
I got the right person. Yeah. I send gifts to them. I send thank you gifts when I get a great person on.
I love that. I always say,
people like, I don't know, that's complicated. I'm like, no, help me, help you. Let's make this work. I need to fly. So yeah.
I do. I'll say that too. Like even in a restaurant, and I know you mentioned that you waited to. I single-handedly put myself through private college and grad school waiting tables. And I do think that that's where we learn too. I think you can always tell people on stage you can go with the flow because we've been there. We've dropped the lobster and we've spilled the drink and we brought the wrong order and right. And so you're just like, just keep smiling.
I'm sorry.
So I think that's a big part of it, that optimism that, the next, again, in sales, I always say every time the phone rings, hopefully that's the next big sale or, that's the next great client versus people who are like, oh, everybody comes in on Tuesday is terrible. Like nobody buys a home on Friday or, whatever it might be. So I think optimism, if you don't have it naturally, I do think it's a characteristic but you have to work on it, like you just have to be intentional about it and figure out a way to make it happen because it's too ugly and dark to be the other side, right? Like who wants to be that pessimist who just, and it gets harder. I don't know how you feel about this, Annie, but I thought about this a lot before this morning, is that I think when you think joy, like children just naturally have it, like the wonder, like on Sunday, one of my friends has a small child and he was like, look at this bug, like, isn't this amazing? Or hey, this person has freezies or, like just this. And I think as we get older, we have to be careful that we aren't always looking for the negative. And given our economic, political, wherever you fit in that, it's harder to do. But man, we have to. Who wants to live like that? Life is too short.
Yeah, I'm definitely an optimist. And some people say you're not realistic. And I'm like, it's a lot more fun to be overly optimistic than overly pessimistic. So why not? Now, Lynn, I like you a lot. I'm a big collaborator, but now I'm nervous for you to ever meet my husband. Because I always tell people, when I want to go on a date night, I'm thinking candles, I'm thinking romance. You know what my husband's thinking? Hey, honey, I made a new spreadsheet.
Well, that's where your question about what keeps you healthy. I have a spreadsheet It literally, I have to, did I take my vitamins? Did I have a healthy breakfast? Did I get up and walk around for 25 minutes? Not like, so I'm just telling you. And my
He
husband,
might
although
like you a little too much though with your spray. You guys could have like
well, we
spreadsheets
can
ready.
just compare notes. And then when he goes back to you, he'll have it all out of his system. So yeah, my husband teases me and he's a spreadsheet person, but he's more spontaneous. Whereas
Okay.
like we go on vacation, I want to plan every minute. And he's like, what if we don't? And I'm like,
We
okay, now
don't.
you're just being mean. Like, I don't even know how to do that. So
We would go on bike rides when we were training for the MS 150 and he would print out the map, even though he had, and I'm like, cause he was like, what if we go here? And I'm like, what if we get lost and we find something cool? He's like, I don't know. I have a plan. We've got to stick to the plan. I'm like, oh, I do not have a plan. It's going to be great. So
see, and I can leave a time. I'll be like, okay, Thursday afternoon, we're just gonna see what happens. And he's just like, but I will have a backup. Like if nothing happens, I have backups. So I'm not saying it's the right way to live. I'm just saying
it
that's how
works, and whatever. It works for my husband. It's just funny because I'll say, like, sometimes my husband to my audience, I'm like, he's so romantic. I'd be like, do you want to have a date tonight? And in my head, I'm thinking Julia Roberts. I'm thinking I'm thinking just romance. And it'd be like, I created this new spreadsheet. And I'm like, no, that is not a
if
good
my husband came to me and said, for a romantic evening, we're gonna create a new spreadsheet to finish up that remodeling project we've got going on, I would just be like, oh honey, I've never loved you more.
See, that's what I mean. This is why I'm nervous for you to meet Greg now. I'm like, oh boy, these two will be talking spreadsheets all night. It'll be anyway. All right. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about health.
Yes.
Because when I owned gyms for those 12 years, people really thought health was physical, but already you've expressed this and you're an optimist and you are joy filled. And even if you're a perfectionist, Lynn, you bring that energy and you're right. It is intentional. I mean, I'll say to people that want to give me a plethora of, oh, did you see what happened in the news? And did you hear this? And they list, and I'll say, I'm sorry, I got to stop you. Tell me one good thing. Yeah. What do you mean tell you one good thing? Stop watching the news, number one. Number two, just there's got to be something good in your life. There's got to be something good in your work. Tell me something good. But I know that health is so much more than our physical health, right? And I think you know that. I think that's part of how we stay happy and joy filled is that. But I like to know always, so what area of health do you personally like to work on? And do you like to work with your clients on? So we've got physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, relationship, and career health. So when you're working with people, first individually, what do you like to work on or what are you focused on right now? And then what do you like to serve people on?
Well, it's interesting. And again, health spreadsheet, but because I think it has to be intentional. I find that for me personally, it's something that especially at this age, right? So we got to this certain age and all of a sudden things don't come as easily. Things don't fit the same way. I don't have the energy that I did. And so I realized like, okay, I have to fix this, right? Like I need to, like so many people, I had a major health scare a few years back and I'm like, okay, I can't take this for granted anymore. Time to get my act together. But I found that having the, you know what they say about the road to hell, right? Just having the intention of getting better didn't work for me. So I literally had to create a spreadsheet where I literally check off, did I have 25 minutes of activity this morning? Did I have, did I get out? Did I spend time in nature? But I also have things on my spreadsheet. It's like, did I do something fun today? Like something that was just fun, whether that was went to a new place or read a new book or talked to somebody who makes me laugh or got my nails done or, whatever it might be, picked out a new color. So that I needed to filter that in because for me personally, health-wise, I'm not a person who's like, I'm going to go jog for 20 miles or 10 miles or I'm in training for something. I don't go to the, gym. I tried the gym. Oh my gosh. I just couldn't, I didn't get to go to your gym, Andy. Awesome. But it was, it was crazy. It just wasn't a good fit for me personally. So again, I have to be intentional about it. And I find like most people, it's partnering with somebody, whether it's my husband or my friends, which is harder to do on the road. I'm not going to lie. Even training for riding is hard when your partner is in Minnesota and you're somewhere else. So I have been trying to work on that. But also like spirituality is really important to me. Might be different than what a traditional person might perceive as spiritual. But I'm trying to really center myself and do more gratitude. So because you can get so easily bogged down and I can deal with a lot of negative self-talk, I force myself like in the morning before I get out of bed and before I go to sleep to think about, okay, what went well today? where, what am I grateful for? What was the good learning opportunity? Again, we always talk, gotta love the learning process, right? So I won't do that again. Learn that lesson. But otherwise, I was getting in this habit of not sleeping and thinking about being up all night, watching TV all night. And I had to stop that. Like I had to be really intentional. So probably of those, and again, to be competitive, I have to think about health, but also you have to be in the right place. There's mindset and there's skill set. And when I work with clients, again, in all these different categories, but we always take a look at, let's look at our mindset and our skill set. Are we always growing and developing and improving our skills? And am I approaching this in a positive way? Because it's pretty easy to make excuses not to do things. I'll start tomorrow, right? I'll start on Monday, or I'm going to, and so just holding yourself accountable is really, really important. But what I like to do too, just as a kind of going back to that, when I ran a corporate team, so I had a large team, we started every meeting with highlights. Mm-hmm. So we would literally say, okay, before we launch into the agenda, everyone's what's a highlight from the last week? And it might be a best practice. It could be a shout out. It could be a tough lesson learned. But I find that starting meetings that way it changes the whole dynamic, and it really involves people in the conversation versus, all right, everybody sit down while I tell you the 37 things we have to do this week, So yeah. I find that was a big shift. And even in my personal life, we had to change how we were, my husband and I would meet up at the end of the day, and I'd be like, yeah, well, here's 3 things that really made me angry today. And we don't necessarily approach problem solving the same way. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to stop doing that. And we literally put a sign up in our main space of our home that says, so they built a life they loved. And we have a conversation about, what do we want? How do we create the life we want? Like, nothing is holding us back. And I find that, so at the end of the day, when we meet up, we talk about the positive, and, let's talk about that first. And then if we want to, talk about something else. So I find that helps both that physical, spiritual, as you well know, they're all tied together so closely. Even financial is tied in there. And so thinking about how to be intentional is probably a big way, but definitely that health and that spirituality are probably the 2 biggest focuses I'm looking at right now.
I appreciate you sharing that, Lynn. So I want to reiterate something Lynn just said. She said when she lays down at night and starts to think that negative thought, that self-doubt. Now, you could be watching this right now and look at Lynn and think, oh my gosh, she's beautiful, she's talented, she's successful. I bet her life's easy. I bet she never has a negative thought. So I think it's really important for our listeners to remember, even what you see of other people's lives, everybody has a struggle, everybody has doubt. But what she said that I find even more important than her being vulnerable to share that she has that doubt is what she does. She stops and she focuses on gratitude. And when I'm working with people, I always like to say, how will you rewrite this story? How will you stop yourself? So it's intention. It's not just stop. Okay, I'm going to stop being negative. No, you're not. We all have doubt. We all have challenges. So we can't just remove it. We have to replace it. And that's what I think was really important, is Lynn saying, hey, I stopped what I was doing. I replaced it with gratitude. I replaced it with thinking positive. When she thinks about spirituality, she's thinking about being out in nature, loving these beautiful animals that she's been given to care for, and how important that is. So I think when we think about it, there's no one right way. We're all different beings, but it's about figuring out what works. The other thing that Lynn said that I think is really important is, and as I'm teasing her about spreadsheets, now I'm feeling guilty, but is we have to find intentional tools that work. So one thing I am going to ask you to do, Lynn, after this talk is, maybe there's a listener out there thinking, Lynn, I don't even know what to start. I don't know. I don't take care of myself. I don't love my work, or I don't love my body, or I don't love my relationship. Where do I start? So if you would even share like as much of your list as you want, but at least 5 ideas of how can I create a checklist? Because some of us need checklists. Some of us, that tangible check that, yes. Oh my gosh, taking my vitamins. Well, I should know to do that. No, I don't always, because I am busy, or to go for my walk.
You jump on a 5 a.m. call or a 7 a.m. call. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I mean, I'm jumping out of bed. I was walking with a woman this morning, and it started raining here, and it reminded me to live in Minnesota. I walked with a mother and daughter that I love dearly. One was my neighbor, and her daughter lived, and it would be freezing out, and we would text the daughter who had to drive over and be like, never mind, we're not walking. Let's meet at Caribou and go for coffee. And she's like, okay, fine. And 2 minutes later, she'd be at our door like, we're walking to Caribou. I'm like, oh my gosh, we love you, but not really, right? Like that accountability, that support and encouragement. And I love your sign in your house. One thing I offer as a tip, because I think it's, like you said, we're all related, but when a relationship is struggling, especially our most significant, whether that's our best friend or our partner or spouse, when that's struggling, it really affects us and affects all areas of our life. So I like to teach people something called wine at 9. And wine at 9 can be a glass of wine at 9, but I know that I work with people in recovery, and I certainly don't want you to drink if you're in recovery. So it can be wine at 9. It can be a glass of grape juice at 9. It can be unwinding at 9. But the third and most important thing, and maybe we go back to the FSs, the fun suckers, and we want to be FF, the fun fillers, is if you're going to whine about your day, which is so common and so normal, you don't get more than 5-10 minutes at the most, and then shift it back to dreaming about the love, shift it back to sharing something good that happened that day. And especially in your significant relationships, it starts to not be fun to come home to each other when it's all negative, right? So I love that you put up this sign to remind you. I love that intention. And that's what I want the listeners to hear, is that it's always about intention. No matter how you see us on social media or out in the world, doesn't mean it's easy for us. It means we decided. And we decide not once, but every morning, every afternoon, every evening. How do I, wait a minute, I was going to be kind. Wait a minute, I was going to focus on the positive. And it brings us back to that stuff. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. You know, Lynn, sometimes when we talk about being hopeful, healthy, and happy, it looks easy for someone else, right? It looks easy, but we all have our challenges. So either what is one thing you want to tell our listeners about? What is one thing you do super intentionally, or what is one myth about health? Like, oh, Lynn, it's easy for you. And thank you also for sharing you had a health scare. You know, so many people have had stuff, and I'm glad you're well. I'm hoping you look great. And so, yeah. But what is a myth, or what is something confusion that I know a lot of my listeners are struggling with some area of their health. And I just always want to be encouragement. That's why we do this. So tell us a little story or myth that you'd like to help us clarify.
Well, you know, I think with the joy and the pain of social media, which I was super late to that social media party because we have to do it now, right, in this industry. But and you know, like you and I discussed about that being vulnerable, and that is not, you know, I try to always hide that. So I really do struggle with that because I'm a firstborn, I'm a perfectionist. You know, there is this perception, like if it's not perfect, people will hate me, people won't hire me, people will want my business to go out, you know, like it's definitely something that I honestly struggle with. Like I try to maintain when really I every time I hear you talk about vulnerability and how much people appreciate that, it like brings my heart this whole level of joy. But I think too, we spend too much time comparing ourselves to others. And that is something that even when you said we talk about canceling events, you're like, well, I had 100 events canceled. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so much more successful than me. Why does she?
No, because they all canceled, but didn't all come back. So I'm like,
no.
It was like,
you know what I
it was
mean?
a new
Like,
level. No, we're getting there. We're going back.
We do that to ourselves, don't we? We get so hung up on that, and it's so crazy. And that's why this collaborative approach, like again, talking about what's going on politically and in our country, and like, man, if we just work together, like if we can appreciate our differences, and if we don't have to all look and think one way to be happy and healthy, like and even being healthy is not approached the same way. Right. I have an amazing friend who is, first of all, gorgeous, but she, you know, she's big boned and strong. And, you know, she, like a lot of women, went through this where, oh, I need to lose weight and be thin. And she lost a bunch of weight. And she's like, I felt weak. I'm strong right now, and I love my curves. I love how I look and feel. And if you don't like it, if some people aren't comfortable with it, that's okay. Yeah. And so I think for me personally, you know, those, you know, people, right, men and women who are just like, I am beautiful, and I might not look like everybody else, and I love that. And I don't have that. Like, I'm very critical and very concerned, and I know I'm working on it. Like, that's no fun. Who wants to be around that person, right? So I think that's a path I'm trying to take. Like, yes, I'm getting older, and I remember my mom competing in her 70s, and you know, it was harder. And I'm like, hey, maybe a win is different, and I'm trying to get okay with that. You know, like I'm trying to get okay with. Maybe healthy for me right now it's not a weight thing. It's not a, you know, running 20 miles thing. It's an energy thing. It's how do I feel about, you know, do I have the energy to do the things that bring joy? Can I keep up with my nieces on the ninja course? You know, that kind of thing. So I think I think there's a lot of myths out there. And I think, frankly, health and happiness is a myth. I think you work toward it every day. And the perfect marriage is a myth. the perfect job, the perfect business, everything comes with that. And so just trying to be more comfortable with it is something I'm definitely working on right now.
I love that. I say, I am not a perfectionist. And I'm grateful for that. Sometimes I wish I was a little more, and I'm sure my husband wishes I was a little more, but I say, how does a perfectionist go to bed every night? So how do you go to bed every night?
Well, most times I don't. I run on very little sleep. But again, that's part of, for me as a perfectionist, I'm better when I have a routine, when I have a plan. I'm going to ride at this time. I'm going to eat at this time. I'm going to, turn off the TV at this time. I've got a new book I'm going to read. I find reading is really helpful for that, because my brain has to be distracted. If I don't keep my brain busy, then it just comes in like, oh, everything you did wrong since you were born.
Well, that's what I was going to say is just perfectionists go to bed disappointed.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do it all perfect, because they didn't get it all right. But I get up every morning and I say, Lord, and I am a woman of faith, but I always say, Lord, if I only mess up 10 times today, like, please forgive me in advance. And I go to bed, I've only screwed up 5 times. Like, I think I'm amazing. I go to bed like, you are a rock star. Like, you can say you're sorry and start over. And so that's why I tell perfectionists, I'm like, I'm married to one. I love him dearly, but his expectation of himself and the rest of the world. And I'm like, I'm never disappointed, not never disappointed. I just figure I'm going to make mistakes. I figure I'm not going to get it right. And it's partially like your girlfriend is like, people will love you. The right people will love you for who you are and with all of you. And that being real makes us approachable, because the truth is, at the end of the day, I just had a great call this morning with someone talking about social media, but the truth is that we all have messy parts, and whether we show them or we hide them or whatever, they exist. The difference between me and a lot of people is I'm just like, here I am, take it or leave it. Like, I know I got some value. I know I might be a weirdo to some or too much for some, but when, just like your friend, we quit trying to be everything. And most of the time we're trying to be everything to impress or to please others. And there's such a freedom in just accepting yourself. So I love that. And I love that you're working on it. When people say to me, how did you become the exception? I'm like, just so you know, I'm not. I get up every morning and I don't feel like it lots of mornings, and I go walk the beach, because movement's my medicine. And I drink the water when I'd much rather drink a Pepsi. And I do whatever it takes to keep working on it. Doesn't mean I don't sometimes drink Pepsi or skip my walk, but it's we're a work in progress. So Lynn,
did you just we teach what we need to learn? I think that's an Annie Meehan quotation. I love that, right?
100%. When people make comments, they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I'm teaching this. I'm posting it because I need to hear it, even though I'm posting it. I'm not really believing it yet, but I figure if I post enough, I'll start to believe it. So, well, thanks so much for being with me today, Lynn, and sharing some of your 4 H's. I always say I got 4. The 4th one is healing, but now we got hope, health, happiness, horses, and healing. So all of these are beautiful. So when people want to get a hold of you and hear more about you or work with you, what's the best way to connect with you, Lynn?
The best way is just to jump on. You can either Google Lynn Jensen Nelson. I have my own website, lynnjensennelson.com. If that's too many N's and E's to remember, my business website is www.conversionomics.com. So please reach out. I'm super active on LinkedIn. I'm always looking to make new connections. So thank you so much, Annie. This has been so much fun. I really, really appreciate being part of your show today.
Great. Well, great having you here and great laughing with you. I'm all about laughter. Let's laugh at ourselves. Mostly I make a fool of myself. Let our nieces laugh at us and go to comedy or whatever it takes. So thanks so much. And thanks for listening. We always appreciate you joining us on H3 TV, where we gather every Wednesday to offer hope, health, and happiness to encourage you and your workplace. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.